Recording is on.
All right, so today's January 17th, 2021. We're continuing our discussion on the Desiderata Extinctionati. And based on the notes, did you want to continue from last week? Or do we want to touch on the book on tyranny? Let's go.
Yeah, I think we should just leave it up to see what events happened this week. So maybe we should just just make sure anybody has any news or anything about what they found.
The only thing
I've been posting a lot on what I've found.
I read it. Very good. I read the book. It's brilliant.
Oh yeah, I did the audiobook.
Yeah, but it's not very long and it says it all. It's a very good book. Didn't learn anything out of it, but it's a good book to share. You know, but yeah.
It was just. I think I posted on the Discord the man from Virginia who came to the Washington. And he was caught having a handgun and 500 ammunition. But then he was let go, but he still has to go on his a trial arraignment. And Hugh and I had a conversation. He thought he was just a contractor. He thought he was just a private contractor.
It's hard to tell. There's not enough information. I mean, you know, he could be recce, just, you know, testing. But yeah, it seems very, very quiet. It seems, I think, if we get through today and tomorrow, then I'll be greatly relieved. I think leaving it to the inauguration day, leaving it to the last day, a coup doesn't sound realistic. But I think, I was looking at. I saw this thing from the BBC. These guys are not so dumb as they seem. They figured out that it was a trap. The authorities were setting a big trap, and they figured out, basically Trump is using them for, an excuse. So not as dumb as they seem. But it's I'm not going to relax until the 21st because I think the bar is pretty low for Trump. All he needs to do is to get enough unrest to call it an insurrection, which is pretty easy. I mean, I think, it's the state capitals. I think all 50 state capitals, particularly ones like Minneapolis and things like that, are very vulnerable. The ones in the South are vulnerable. You only have to have 2 or 3 of those, and you've got enough movie footage to say, for him to declare, invoke the Insurrection Act. It's been invoked before, and so it wouldn't be unprecedented. It's a pretty low bar to do it. So, yeah, I think he would definitely take the excuse if he's given it. So it's pretty smart if those guys are smart enough not to do anything. But, I didn't think they were that smart, but apparently they are. What did other people think?
I think some people have figured it out, like you. I think that a lot of people are smart enough to not fall into the trap because, as you posted on Reddit, the research for martial law and insurrection went skyrocketing, and I think it's been debated in a lot of forums, this possibility of martial law. And I think some people have read into the scenario. The mind of a psychopath is quite easy to read for a sane person. It's kind of predictable, and I think that's what people have done. I don't know.
It's predictable if you're prepared to be conspiratorial. What unsettles me is that the fact that the left will not see conspiracies. If you're incapable of seeing evil, you're going to be a victim of it. And if you won't see evil, I think that you deserve what you're going to get. But I think it's the left think, conspiracy theories will be okay, we'll block our ears. And it's like, no, it's the other way around. You're far better off having false positives than false negatives. One false negative on a conspiracy like this, and you're toast for 1,000 years. So it's, but the normalcy bias, and it's like, oh, don't unnerve me, don't upset my equilibrium. Is really what they're saying. So it means that it's the same story over and over. The liberals care more about their feelings than about their liberty. Yeah, just on that point, unless anybody's got anything else to say, is there's like, yeah, I kind of want to raise the point about what's the difference between anarchists and these guys. They're very, very close. If you see some of the things that they say, I mean, the Trump support, well, Trump's just out for himself. He's just a psychopath. But what he's leaning on is libertarian sentiment. And so these right-wing libertarians, they're very close to anarchists in a way, because they hate the government and authoritarianism. The difference between an anarchist and one of these right-wing libertarians is basically just heart. I mean, anarchists are people that have compassion and have a heart and sympathy, and mutualism. And what these guys are, it's just pure ego. It's just basically their ego against the state. So they're fighting for their ego. And I think anarchists, or proper ones, not these fake ones, I'm appalled now on our anarchism to see these guys, how they're reacting. I mean, you go on our anarchism now at a time like this, it's appalling that they're posting stuff on, how to do a fucking vegan garden and shit like that. The whole world's about to blow up. And these I mean, they're no revolutionaries. They're just, liberals that like to wear black. That's all it is. They're just basically snowflakes in black. And so there's no, anarchism is dead. But if you the old ideal of true anarchists was egoless people that, were against, authoritarianism and for liberty. And I think that basically all the right-wing libertarians, they're sovereign individuals, and they're fighting against the state for their ego. So it's the difference between fighting against the state without ego for liberty and for fighting for personal liberty against the state. It's a vast chasm. But I wish people would highlight that. And anarchists just get beaten up from all sides. Now they're saying, they got that one guy who they said was an agent provocateur from Antifa. Now they're saying that, the whole insurrection was Antifa. That's like, oh my God. That's what they're reporting on the right, and it's getting headway. I watched OAN and Fox News, and the digital divide between the liberal media, the mainstream media, with all these popular, hey, look at these cute puppies, TV, and the digital divide is so huge that they can't understand each other. It's like they're two different languages in the country. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, and I also listened this week. I also listened to some right-wing news, even Alex Jones, and yeah, it's a lot of the blame. They blame it on BLM, Antifa, and they even have a derogatory term for Antifa. They call them Pantifa, and it's like I don't know. People want to see them, the right and the left come together, but at this point, I don't see it happening because they're just so far apart. So it's like polarized. I don't see it coming together. I mean, yeah.
Well, there seems to be, I mean, I think the way I would characterize it, there's a strong gender bias in all of this. It's getting blatantly, like, oh, the girls have won. And, and from the right wing, it's, it's the boys. It's like, hey, you're not going to castrate us and, basically emasculate us and, take away our guns and stuff like that. There's a strong kind of eroticism about it, and there's a strong gender bias about it, and no one talks about that. But it's all over the place. If you even in XR and stuff, they they're continually sniping, and you know, a girl thing and a boys thing and stuff like that. And so it has all the characteristics of a huge gender war to me. What do other people think about that?
I never thought of that. I don't know. I have no idea about that. It's funny, that first time I think about it.
Me neither. I've never thought of it as a gender war. I just know that the country is very polarized, and as Lord Hugh published, you know, one of the posts about an ARG where the right believes so much in something totally different. I mean, um, it's almost like we're living in different planets. Our truths are so different.
Yeah, that's why I did the ARG with Planet Elsewhere and Planet Nowhere, because it was literally a riff on the fact that we are on two different planets. So it's you know, I thought the ARG is supposed to be to wake people up almost through pantomime, really. But you can see how powerful an ARG is. Basically, what QAnon and these guys have done is an ARG. It's an alternate reality game. The alt-right is an alternative reality. And then the left shoots it down because they just say, well, it's, you know, silly conspiracy theories. But people need them. I mean, Jung said that people need mythology. And we're suffering from the fact that no one has a mythology. Everybody, you know, you have this scientific, hard, you know, rationalist view, and it's kind of absolutist. And then nobody weaves a story around it, because you can weave any story around it. But I think that the alt-right has woven a good story around it in terms of just conspiracy and distrust. It's what a good shaman would do. It takes what everybody knows and thinks around the campfire and weaves a coherent, you know, story out of it so everybody can agree on some narrative. But it's a pity that people won't do that anymore. There's this kind of absolutist idea that there is some truth out there that's reductionist and you can get to it, and this, you know, scientists have a handle on it, and you listen to authorities and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, but where's the mythology? Where are we going with all this? I mean, the world's getting dystopian and it's getting mechanized. And what's the story here? Why are we doing all this? You know, it's kind of this insane, blind doctor says kind of, you know, the world will be like this. And there's nobody's doing a story for why we're doing this and stuff. And I think that's a big lack. I think we need a mythology. And so what I'm trying to do with an ARG is to make a mythology that's a lot better than some, you know, QAnon conspiracy. So I think people should be more forgiving, or we should find a way of engaging people. In some ways, it would almost be better if Trump won. If Trump did have a coup, I mean, it would be freaking awful. But the upside of it is that basically people would see the power of what Adam Curtis said was the power of nightmares. Basically, the power of just telling stories. And, you know, the left should learn to tell stories. The left has increasingly cut off from the past. It's all this fucking cut. You know, it's, you know, cut off from everything, cut off from history, cut off from, and ultimately it's a cut off from nature. They're not too into nature anymore than the alt-right. Even the alt-right has a bit more, you know, kind of blood and soil and a bit more connected with nature, but it's very much a National Geographic connection with nature, even on the left. So, you know, it's similar, you know, it's exemplified by the fact how we got to environmentalism has become something about green energy. You know, what the fuck's green energy? Green energy is just fucking industrialism by another name. I mean, isn't ecology something to do with nature and the wild? And it's like, no, we farm the wild, we hammer it, cut it down to size, you know. But yeah, I mean, increasingly not liking the left. I don't like the left or the right, but I mean, the left's disgusting more and more these days. Just their behavior now. I think that's left is kind of always supposed to be the anarchist side, and I just see it less and less. I say, how can these self-obsessed egotists be anarchists? It's an outrage. Yeah, but that's what I think. What do people think?
Yeah, I kind of see that. Just being exposed to the left and the right, sometimes it's good to step into their shoes or be amongst a crowd or at least see them. And there's a different energy in the right. It seems like they're more, a lot of them have been saying that they die for their cause. They have a very strong emotion. They won't let anything hold them back. And on the left, I see it as, let's be inclusive. It's okay. We shouldn't have a stance. We should be listen to everyone and come together. And then the right's like, this is my stand or the highway. It's like, this is my way or the highway. And that's why a lot of people like Trump. He seems to be very authoritative, and he likes to make deals, he says, and he supposedly gets things done. He's a good showman, even though the facts don't show that. He's a good president. He makes a good show, and people see that, hey, at least he's trying to make the country better. Oh, he wants to build up walls so these immigrants won't come, or these terrorists, these people from the South won't come in and with their drugs. So they take a stand. And I mean, there's some elements the left can take from the right? Like to take a stand, to stand firm, have courage. Of course, don't the ideals of the right. I mean, there's some ideas that should be rejected, but of course, there's some ideas from the right that are worth considering. So that's what I think.
Yeah, it appeals to me personally that the right is prepared to die for something. I think that's kind of noble. I mean, they want to die for the wrong thing, but it's kind of noble. I kind of admire the fact that they do want to die for something. I mean, on the left, it seems like, ask any liberal or anybody on the left, what would you die for? It's like, fuck all. I'd die for me. I would. They wouldn't like get a hangnail for anything other than themselves or what their feelings or something like that. But that I mean, the idea of like dying to save the planet or dying to save the wild or what's left of the ecology of this planet. It's like there's no one. There's very few people. There's like deep green resistance and stuff, but the average person wouldn't die for fucking anything. They would have they have billions die in their stead, but they wouldn't personally offer their lives for anything. And it's kind of nice that it's a nationalistic ego they've got on the right. They would die for some patriotic thing like that, but it still has kind of a bigger ego than just the individual ego. At least a slightly bigger ego. At least it's their state or their nation or their party or their white people or something. At least it's bigger than themselves. It seems to me like the left is just like me. It's like, what's this about? It's about me. It's like, really? Is that the size of your ego? Yeah, it's a box, this size, the size of your head. Yeah.
I don't think that, I'm sorry to contradict you, but I don't think there's a divide between left and right in that line. I think that in both sides, you've got people who are into their ego completely, and you've got a little fringe on the right and as on the left of people who have come to terms with that, who are connected to nature. I think what we see of the right is only a little tiny sample that's there. But in general, I talk to both, like you, Mike, and I see on both sides some people who are ready to die for something, on both sides. But They're tiny. It's a fringe on both sides. I don't think you can just. I mean, the left makes me sick, and the liberalism that has got to the left is the same as the liberalism that's gone to the right, except little nuances, you know, in terms of. But I don't see a difference. I see a big extreme center, and on the side, some people who are still for liberty and who've got ideals. But there's no more divide. I don't think so.
But it seems to me that the guys on the right, they say, you know, like, our president or death, and everybody goes, yay. And you say on the left, you know, anything or death, and you'd be pelted with tomatoes from your own side.
Yeah, but it's not. I don't know enough the American right to talk about it. I've only experience of the European right, so it's probably a very different story across the Atlantic.
Yeah, I'm really talking about America. Yeah, I've got my head totally in America now. Yeah, but
same here.
yeah, it just seems to me that's the moderation in the, you know, it's the radical center again. It's the moderation is extreme. It's basically it's unhealthily moderate. You can't be that moderate. The only thing as moderate as that is a cow or a sheep or something that's going to get farmed. I think that basically, you know, moderation taken to such an excess means that somebody's going to exploit it. And I think that's kind of what's happening. I mean, psychopaths push and push and see what they can get away with. And if you're a total, you know, herd animal, there's nothing that will stop that. They'll be chopping up your liver and dining on it if you don't resist.
I think Risa wants to talk.
Yeah, I have a comment to make. I remember a number of years ago in New York City, there was an election, and one of the candidates that was running, he wanted to make the subways free. And I'm like, no, they're people that work there. They clean the subway. They work, you know, they work there. Where are they going to get their salary from? They make it free. So there's extreme on the left, there's extreme on the right, which is not good. So.
But couldn't, I mean, the city pays their salary, right? It's not private corporation.
Right, correct. But they were making the candidate was making a statement that the subway should be free in terms of the people that use the subways to get on, you know, to pay the fares and everything. But then where are they going to get the money for the people that work there? They have to clean the subway. The people work there.
I think they get them from taxes. Yeah, the problem, I think in most cities that have found that they gave free transport, they eventually had to start charging at least, you know, peppercorn for transport, because what it exposes is if you make something free, it exposes all the problems on the wider society. So if you make public transport free, then homeless people kind of, you know, sleep in the trains and stuff. So then to stop that, they always found you had to make at least 10 cents or something like that to stop that. Because the reason why homeless people start sleeping on the trains is because they're not providing shelter. And so basically, what it's a lesson in, and this is the problem with socialism in general, is you can't have little corners that are really socially just, because basically they just get swamped by the other injustice. It's a little vacuum, and all the structural violence and injustice and the rest of the system just bleeds into them. It's like why you can't have an anarchic community on an island somewhere, because basically all the crooks and lowlives and everything that are the, you know, generated by the capitalist system will come and use you as a base. And so that you can't have little islands. It has to be socially just across the board, and then nobody can get there, because basically it's like, where does the money come from? That's the problem. I think in essence is what you're saying, isn't it? It's like, where does the money come from for socialism is ultimately what
the challenge.
That's the challenge here.
Yeah, this is not Risa. This is A, and that's a very good point. I work in transit, and when COVID was at its peak, we stopped charging for revenue so that passengers could get into the back door and not have to pay fare. And so I ride the bus to work, and yes, a lot of the people that remained riding were the unfortunate, disadvantaged people. And you're very right, because we live in a moderately high cost of living city, and there are not very many um, shelters for the homeless. So even before the pandemic, we would have riders who would just ride all day long, because it's air conditioned in the summer and heated in the winter. And also the public libraries were the same way. Homeless people would fall asleep in chairs, and the poor librarians would have to rouse them, because they can stay as long as they don't sleep. So these poor people are slumping in chairs, and the librarian, sir, you can't sleep here. So your point is very good, that these little islands, if it's not fair across the board, all the resources of those free services will be drained.
Yeah, so the reason why socialism falls down is because then you need to collect the revenue to pay for all these social services. You basically you can't really have a library like the Seattle library. It's just, you know, kind of reeking. It's a wonderful library, but it catches your breath to go in there, because the smell of homeless people is so bad, because people are just living there because they got nowhere else to go, and it's heated. And so basically, yeah, so it catches your breath just going in there. It's kind of a trial. But then you can only have, it's kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You can only have a library once you've got people in food and shelter. You can't really operate, you know, part of the system, or, you know, so where you get to, I think, is you say, well, the city has to pay for social services and for homeless people and for shelter and stuff like that, and it has to feed people that can't afford to feed themselves. And then the question is, where does that money come from? And I mean, it has to come from taxes. So then you have to have a state. And when you've got a state and taxes and you're collecting revenue, then you've got the system we've got now. So socialism doesn't get anywhere. The problem is you have to dismantle the whole system. I don't think industrialization works. It's simply put, you can't have this system, you know, urban industrial society. It's civilization comes from civitas, city. It is the social organization of a city. If you've got cities, you've got injustice, and you will have capitalism. There's no escape. You can't sidestep it with socialism or communism. We just have to get rid of these urban jungles. It's basically,
you have cities, you have pandemics, you have collapse. I was rereading Against the Grain for the second time through it, and every analysis of every city that started to rise in Mesopotamia fell from diseases, and it's just, I really think it's a must read. That it's the most recent book that James C. Scott wrote, and it's got it all. He's got it all in it. It's not that big to read, and really, I think, God, he's just I can't summarize everything here, but I think you've read it, Mike, haven't you?
Just portions of it, but I haven't finished it yet.
Yeah.
What, Against the Grain?
Against the Grain, yeah. James C. Scott.
Yeah, I've read it.
Yeah,
I've read it. It's basically my thesis as well. It's that all those early cities, they grew up and then burnt out. They're like a bushfire, so that basically they consume all the natural environment that they can, and then they just move on, exactly like a bushfire, and it just gets bigger and bigger. And now we've got a bushfire. You know, it's the city is now as big as the globe. It's not a global village; it's a global city. So this is the final iteration of just, you know, moving on, just burning a scorched earth, scorching the natural environment in one thing, and just moving on to wherever the resources are. So it's this utopian thing. We're at a crossroads with all these millenarian utopianists who want to do this this Promethean thing where they think, well, we all become androids, and so the Rockefeller Foundation and the Great Reset and the Fourth Industrial Revolution and all of those guys, they're saying no, we can transcend nature and into this new wonderland where all the machines are taxed and we have a UBI and people can just sit around. And it's like, no, it's not going to work. How long is it going to be before some little bean counter says, what are all these useless drones who sit around, these millions of people sitting around just collecting a UBI? What are they for exactly? And they'll be wiping us out in a genocide. You can't. It's the utopia is not going to work. It's socially, it's just one step closer to. They don't respect the individual or people, and if there are loads of surplus people that are costing their precious system resources, they're going to wipe us out. They're eugenicists at heart. And so, yeah, I think the most dangerous thing of all is this futuristic. Promethean futuristic future that's all positive about electronics and stuff like that. So you're not thinking this through. I posted this video that kind of said it now just recently about they basically said the same thing. They had Neural Harari, the guy who did Sapiens and all of that. They had him saying all this stuff that I've been saying. But I don't think anybody hears this stuff. They just like the goodies. They're so easily bought with shiny objects, and people like the urban environment. But what's dangerous about the urban environment is the intermediaries. It's basically you've got intermediaries between you and everything you need. You've got intermediaries, lots of intermediaries between you and your food source, and you and your justice, and you and your protection, and you and your health, and you and nature. They're chains and chains of intermediaries, and I think that's unsustainable. You can't have somebody intervening between you and if you're religious and you have a god, you have a priest who's an intermediary between you and God. Any intermediary like that is a false front, and it's unsustainable. So if you live in a city, you need intermediaries. You need people to bring food to you. You need people to bring electricity and heat. And every damn thing you get has an intermediary. Then people say, well, all these big tech companies, they have us by the balls. And you say you're saying well, we've got... Hello? I'm sorry. I thought somebody said something.
Children are in the background.
Oh yeah. So basically, you can't come to Amazon and say, hey, you've got us by the balls now because we're all at home and now you get food delivered. So then saying like you oh yeah, can you thanks. But you can't say, well, Amazon is too authoritarian. They've got us by the balls because we all need food, and the only way to get food now is to get it delivered by Amazon. And you say, well, yeah, you appointed them as an intermediary. You'll always have some intermediary that'll have some hold of you. That's where the power comes in. Once you outsource your protection, that's it. Once you outsource your earnings, your protection, everything you outsource means that person owns you. They're standing on your oxygen pipe. So you'll never be independent. You'll always be dependent. And it's a pipe dream to say, yeah, but we'll be mutually dependent and we'll all respect each other's oxygen. And you say, no, because you've got psychopaths and you're not prepared to kill them. So then we can't have a society. We can't have nice things while there are people like Donald Trump around. So it's like, in essence, you have to get rid of industrial society. And if people don't start monkey wrenching it soon, it's going to go away anyway. But you've got to be accelerationists because there's not going to be much left unless we start getting rid of it and monkey wrenching it. So we need to get people that think the same way and start working against the system and basically educating to people saying, look, it's going away anyway. Make it go away early. You're doing this people a favor. But it's hard to get through, but I believe you can get through with an R. Oh, hi.
Hey, sorry. It's interesting what you were just saying, actually. Just a few paragraphs back about the techno-utopian Great Reset Rockefeller people. I've been getting I've been following a few people on the right, just, you know, through various channels, who are obviously coming into this from the point of view of, this is bad news, you know, for people on the right, in terms of the lockdown restrictions that have, you know, and I'm wondering if those people actually from the right, you know, might be getting to the point where they're thinking they're going to need to monkey wrench it. There seems to be a lot more voices on the right, is what I'm saying, that are kind of agreeing with what you say. They despise any idea of some techno-utopia, great reset, because of course, all this green agenda, you know, and of course, that's always a left-right issue, isn't it, you know? So maybe there will be more people from, I'm not talking about the hard right necessarily, but yeah, from the right, I think, maybe. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it is biased more. You know, anti-tech is more left or right biased. I mean, if you look at like the definitive anti-tech guy who was ahead of all of us was Uncle Ted, which I'm sure you know who Uncle Ted was. I hesitate to say his name because if you say that on these things, basically, it's not conspiratorial to say that they're trigger words, and his name is one of them. But the NSA and all these guys that are polling, they're very. You can have a look at what words you use, and they basically, there's a list of words that basically will start. You know, bots will start tracking the conversation. But what I've often said to people is, get the list of words and just have millions of conversations where you use those words. You've got to swamp these systems. That's the big weakness. You see, the big weakness of the surveillance state, it's too nosy, and they can't handle a deluge. You see, what I suspect is happening right now at a time like this is the guys are completely overwhelmed. They've done all this tracking stuff and everything, but basically it has to come at a certain pace. So at times like this, they're completely overwhelmed. They basically, you know, the FBI and stuff is running around like headless chickens now, because they just see networks everywhere. It's too fluid, and so basically they just, all they wind up doing is sending out these, you know, communiques to the capital saying, you know, the shit's going to come down. And it's like, well, what shit? Who? And they say, everybody, everywhere. You know? And that's the big danger of these systems. Is basically, Binney warned them. Binney warned, you know, if you know, I think Michael Binney, but he was a defector from the system, but he was a patriot. He was nationalist, and so, but he warned the NSA and stuff and said, like, these systems are incredibly fragile because they're going to get overloaded with data. They're going to get data overloaded. And that's always what happens to these guys. It's like the state is like a monster of paranoia. And so if you're paranoid about everything, you try and say, oh, we want more information. Every paranoid, you know, psychopath at the top, they always want more information. Give me more information. Give me. And so all the little underlings run off and make these systems that get more. And eventually you get so much data that you're overwhelmed. And that's where and basically selective. And they have no salience landscape. And eventually they just go, everybody's out there, the barbarians, horizon to horizon. So we must get the sheep to understand their numbers. So for example, like, just have a look at all of this is bluff, right? If you go back and look at how authoritarians work, if you look at how the British Empire worked, it was basically a little kid with a revolver and a pith helmet subduing like 20,000 natives just by fear. And basically, if like 10 of them had said, like, fuck off, dude, they would have that would have been the end of the British Empire. But they all keep it going with bluff and bluster and swagger. And that's how all authoritarians work. So if you take, for instance, this lockdown now in the capital, there are 25,000, right? They're just weak mostly. But it's very, very intimidating, this show of power. It's actually a show of weakness. They're like 450,000 National Guardsmen in the US. You think that's like 500,000 soldiers. That's like, most countries' armies as just National Guardsmen, just to, handle situations like this. And then, you think 450,000, wow, that's, America's a police armed camp. Say, no, 450,000 is less than 1/10 of the US population. You can see how conflicted I am on nationality. But it's 1/10 So the entire National Guard that needs to hold down an insurrection is 1/10 of the entire American population. Basically, if everybody got rowdy, there'd be like 300 people per National Guardsman. They could just, walk up and knock their helmet off and say, "Fuck off, dude," and the guys would be running faster than the guys in the Capitol. So they put on this big show, and they have all this, locking in and show all the tanks rolling in and stuff, and it's all bluff. If the people said like, "Oh, we've had enough," you just walk through those guys. You see, one of the things of the Capitol is it was an inside job, and that's why I was so upset last week, because I didn't realize that they'd infiltrated so badly. But the same goes, basically that the population has to be educated to say, look, we outnumber these. The ants outnumber these locusts thousands to one. Yeah, it's just a question of intimidation. It's just a question of fear.
Exactly. I mean, this has happened so many times in history, and we're badly in need of historians to come out and tell the number of times throughout history where the people have risen up and stormed the ramparts, as it were, and people were just, and this is what I'm saying about people. So there's a lot of people in the UK on the right of the argument, conservatives, who are saying, look, we don't have to stand for this. This is okay. This is a bit of a side thing because it's not to do with America. But anyway, I'm saying that, yeah, there are people on the right side of the argument who say, look, no, if we all stood up and said, no, we don't want this lockdown anymore, for example, then, what are they going to do?
Well, this is where we completely ridden by IDpol and all these kind of liberal tropes that are now plaguing the left. Because I've tested this. I've gone on to right-wing sites and stuff and just trolled them and stuff and said, try to be provocative and say, hey, the horseshoe theory that the extreme left and the extreme right is the same, should come on over to the extreme left. And on the extreme right, they'll go, yeah, fuck, we got nothing against you. I don't like gay guys and stuff, but I'll live with it if you tearing down the government. But on the left, it's like, what? They're fucking Nazis. It's like just utter blinds go up. And you say, like, hang on a minute, let's just analyze this freaking Nazi trope for a minute. And you just start down this path and you just say, look, Hitler was actually a National Socialist. And they all say, oh, name only. I say, no, he was a socialist. The difference between an international socialist and a National Socialist is huge. But it's still socialism. He implemented socialism in Germany at a national level. Completely different to international socialism, admittedly. But don't get your knickers in a twist about this left and right thing. They've done a great job of dividing us. And it's the left's problem. The right doesn't see this. The right doesn't like cancel culture. The right doesn't like this homogeneity. The right wants to keep it simple. But compared to the fact that we have a common enemy, it's these oligarchs and their government. And so we have to basically start that, and we have to start a culture of shut up with your IDpol. Your fucking identity doesn't matter to me. In fact, I find it repulsive that you have your little identity that you groom. It makes me sick. So I was saying, like, get over your fucking identity and start talking to people on the right.
Yeah, I feel like the left has forgotten its project in general. I feel like the left was originally supposed to be people for the commons against the government and capital. That's what the left is supposed to be doing. And I'm pretty sure even the right could get behind that.
Yeah, the left is supposed to be for the workers. And it's like, there are no workers now. Everybody's a white-collar worker, and they're liberals that shop at Walmart. It's like, there's nothing left about this. Everyone's just a freaking capitalist with some fucking T-shirt, different T-shirts on. But so I think our biggest fight is against identity politics in this. You have to basically say, we're on your side, and you got to fucking jack up. So in some ways, I'm like, if we get through to the 21st without a coup, I'm hugely relieved, because basically, fucking hell, I mean, a Trump tyranny would be a fucking disaster. But I'm also a little bit upset because the left has learned nothing. If we make it through without a coup, we'll be fucking lucky. And the left hasn't learned anything. They still believe in all these institutions. They're still gloating and crowing and indulging themselves in this ugly way. And it's like, you just wake up, man. It's basically you've got to change. The left has to change. But they're all about, the world has to change and all this. No, the left has to change first. Basically. So yeah, that's the way I feel about it.
It's as if the left has fallen into the distraction of identity, me first. um, so it's kind of hard for everyone to see that, as you say, there is a common enemy, and it's all the propaganda too of the mass media that emphasizes hate and divisiveness. So it seems like it's really a concerted effort that's intentional to divide us. It's probably one of the oldest strategies, divide and conquer.
I think
It
it goes back to
intentional,
the video that you posted a long time ago and you had in your videos, Hugh, of Adam Curtis. I think it's also relates to that, the century of the self, the machine of consuming, and that all this is a very well oiled system now that's completely permeated the right and the left even more, because it has appealed to people with enormous egos. Yeah, that's the fate of the left. It's resumed in all those theories, I think.
It was Eddie Bernays. Eddie Bernays and a few of these architects, they deliberately, people don't realize how cunning and deliberate this all was, because then again, conspiracy theories. It's like, no, it wasn't a conspiracy theory. just anything that makes you feel bad. In the liberal left, anything that makes you feel bad is toxic and a conspiracy theory, and go away. And it's like, I would like the world in a way to get bad, just so that they would have to get over that. Basically, if you don't get over this fucking sugar addiction, we're in such deep trouble. It's basically you're trading sugar for pain and misery later. So that it makes my skin crawl, because I feel like I know where they're headed, and so basically they should be making hay, is the thing, but their kind of sugar addiction now is being paid for with the debt of pain afterwards. And so every time they say, like, don't make my feelings bad, they say, like, look, I can make your feelings good, but it runs at a deficit. They think it's all for free. They get to feel good all the time for free. Say, no, every time you feel good now is a debt that has to be paid for with pain later. I don't think people have that concept. But does anybody understand what I'm saying?
Well, yes, and I ties to something you said about the lockdowns earlier. Don't go away. You said something about the lockdowns, and I was intrigued, because I haven't debated this much about only the acceptance, the usefulness, the timing of all these lockdowns around the world. I don't know how they are in America, but us, you're in the UK, aren't you? And I'm in Ireland.
Yeah.
We have very strict ones, and I traveled to a couple of countries a while recently, and I saw what it can be to be policed and punished for breaking lockdowns. So, what was your point when you were talking about the lockdowns earlier?
I think I was getting at what a lot of people on the right are saying now is that this is part of a greater strategy by these people like Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum, the Great Reset. It's all there. It's all public. So this is why it's funny now, because there's all these fairly mainstream journalists on the right of the argument, like who write in the Spectator, like James Delingpole and who else? Quite a few anyway. But they are saying like clearly this is like out in the open. And when there's a crisis like there conveniently was with the pandemic. They've started, it's convenient to have everyone locked up. I suppose there's also the other argument of like the long march through the institutions, the left, that agenda, I would probably say as well.
What's that?
The Antonio Gramsci, the Long March, the sort of left's takeover of the cultural institutions within the UK and arguably in the West as a whole. Which kind of ties into the argument of like, why is the left now? It's all just like Gen Z, isn't it? And why like identity politics? And they've already kind of won in that respect. The left, the communists, as it were, in terms of like breaking the West, destroying the family.
Jordan Peterson's argument, right? Jordan Peterson as well, right? Argument.
Does he say that? I'm not sure. I haven't seen any Jordan Peterson of late. Maybe. But anyway, I think I was just making the point about the lockdowns. That plays in very easily to the elite. It's good. We're heading to neo-feudalism, aren't we? And they're quite happy to have us all locked up and, as Hugh was saying earlier, reliant on Amazon and all these corporations. And it's breaking people down, yeah. But I suppose there's two strands to the argument there. I'm not sure what you were referring to, Sophie, but yeah.
Well, I was interested to know what was the position of people in the group on the response to the COVID crisis around the world and different positions, because I'm perplexed also. I can see, as a doctor, I can see a point in not mixing when, because I mean, this winter, nobody has got a cold. Nobody's got a flu, because people are washing their hands. They're not going to visit old people. So, do you know what I mean? There's all sorts of plenty of sides to these, but the way the lockdowns are enforced, the agenda behind it, all that is open to debate, and I'm interested in hearing what you have to say.
Well, it's a trade-off, right? And we're not allowed to discuss the trade-off. That's what worries me.
Yeah. I think there's a bigger thing at work. I mean, the pandemic, no doubt. COVID is a nasty disease if you get it, but I still think they're overplaying it. Here in the UK, the BBC propaganda is going off the scale now. It's incredible, and it's become politicized. It has already. You can tell the majority. Well, according to the polling, which of course we know is bogus. They reckon most people are now in favour of even stricter lockdowns. And they're joking on mainstream media about paying people to snitch on people for breaking lockdown rules. It's crazy. It's getting weird, very weird. Quickly.
It's the very old tactic of divide and conquer. That's why I don't like these identity politics. It's completely fucked over the left with divide and conquer. Yep.
Yeah, well, it's already happening on the continent that there's delation and people are calling police if somebody is not respecting lockdown. That is just rampant in Europe. I don't know how it was.
That's straight out of 1984.
Yeah.
That's it sent a chill down. I just saw this article today. It sent a chill down my spine. Is that the FBI is getting kids to rat out the parents who were at the insurrection.
Really? Oh, jeez.
Yeah, because they know there's a generational divide, and so basically, yeah, this one woman was caught because her daughter ratted her out. And the FBI encouraging it. It's just that is one of the vignettes in 1984, if you remember it. The kid ratting out the parents. The state using kids to rat out their parents. The Stasi did it in East Germany. That's the worst thing you can do, is to divide a generation, by politics, exploited. That's something I agree with the right on, is the destruction of the family. That destruction. I mean, the nuclear family is an abomination. But if you destroy filial loyalties at that level by ratting people out, it's just, we're done. We're done. Auschwitz comes next. You see, we need to have hard conversations and stop this Zionist bullshit about what happened in those death camps. And one of the things that happened in the death camps is all the taboo subjects that you're not allowed to talk about, like why wasn't there any resistance, and then, oh yes, there was resistance, and we'll make up a new history where there was fabricated resistance, this kind of thing. Well, one of the reasons why they were able to do the genocide in Auschwitz is because they got people to work against each other. They got everybody into a rat race where everybody was individualist working together. If they had solidarity, the guys, again, there were so many millions in those camps, they could have walked out. They didn't have the guards to keep them in if they'd resisted. But they set things up so that everybody ratted everybody else. Everybody was in competition against each other. And that's one of the ways you can do these managed extinctions and genocides, is to get individuals to work against each other. And you can get the young to work against the old. Any little division you can find, you just stick a wedge in it. The state sticks a wedge in it, and we're seeing it done now.
Yeah, I remember that from 1984 as well. Like, especially that part where like O'Brien is like talking to Winston about how the state keeps the oligarchy in power, like destroying like love and the sex instinct and all that. That's just horrible shit.
Yeah, it's the intermediaries. They destroy any bonds between humans and replace them. The state intervenes and says, I'm an intermediary. An intermediary between sex and love and religion and food and everything. Is basically the state can reinforce itself by making sure that it's an indispensable intermediary. It's just weaning yourself off the teat. But unfortunately, that's why I say that it's a gender divide, because it has a lot to do with domestication and dependence. It's kind of like there is this element of the mammalian brain that basically the mother that can't cut the umbilical cord and let the children be free. So you have this kind of unholy alliance with this kind of feminist thing, which is kind of like, oh, I must look after the little chicks. So everybody thinks that's all nice because it's motherhood and apple pie, and it's Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and it's basically the New Zealand Prime Minister, and it's nice because it's mom and apple pie. And it's saying, yeah, it's also the fucking worst form of authoritarianism that you can believe it. Basically, everybody in New Zealand is kind of dependent on this mother figure. That's not a good place to be at all. Basically, there are more sheep that are standing on two legs in New Zealand than on four.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a tough reckoning for people that aren't realizing this stuff, and liberals. It's like I feel like the whole industrial system is doing like Hitler's guns and butter policy against the entire planet right now. Yeah.
But what is the situation of lockdowns in the US at the moment? Is there any lockdowns? Is there what is it? Is it different state?
I don't know exactly what the I think it's not like, I don't think it's locked down. I think people are doing their social distancing. Yeah. I'm kind of far away from the action in that regard. I like clean a school at night, so I'm like away from the marketplace and all that stuff and away from crowds. So I kind of try to talk to people and see what's going on. But as far as I know, no major lockdown. It's just social distancing right now.
Yeah,
It's all
same.
done by state. So like my kids are in Washington, and then the colleges are closed, so they're doing classes online. But the shops are open, everything's open, nobody wears a mask. It's just basically everybody's going around doing the business in most states. I don't think there are any states that are seriously locked down. You have to wear a mask. If you don't, it's kind of like a statement. But you wouldn't, I mean, considering here I'm in Greece, and basically they're handing out $2,000 fines on the street, spot fines of $2,000, and these guys are losing their restaurants. They've been shuttered up, and they've been, fined $5,000 and stuff for letting people through the door, and so, but it sounds very authoritarian, but it's not as bad as you think. It's basically because the people